Ian, first of all, thank you for taking your time to do this. Ian's one of the most important people in my story, right? In my journey of recovery. Not only did we use together, right?
Yeah.
Ian was the guy that I seen who I can identify with, right? Like me and Ian grew up the same, like the same, right? Not completely the same, but
Like fucking what? 5 blocks from each other.
5 blocks from each other, right? This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sorensen's Ace Hardware, located at 402 Washington Avenue in Los Banos, proudly serving the community since 1947. Please check out our friend at Sorensen's for all your hardware needs. Come on, guys, support those who support us. Thanks, Sorensen's. Sorensen's also has a Modesto location located at 1433 Coffee Road. Modesto, true value for all your hardware needs. For all of our people out in the Modesto area, please support those who support us. Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by our friend and realtor, Naomi Townsends with Keller Williams Property Teams. She'll help you in every step of the way, whether you're buying or selling a home, commercial property, mobile home, or even a vacant lot. In the last few years, she's helped hundreds of families buy their dream homes in the Central Valley, Bay Area, Monterey, and even the Sacramento area. Check her Zillow profile where she has a perfect 5-star ranking. She is also bilingual in Spanish. In 2021, she was in the national top 2 in her brokerage. Please, guys, check out her Instagram, Sold by Naomi, or reach out to her at 408-623-1414. All the links are in the bio. Remember, guys, support those who support us.
You gotta get uncomfortable, but get comfortable.
There's some help, and it ain't on the way. It's already waiting for you.
This little pill right here could take over your life, and I found that out the hard way. Mission statement of this podcast highlights stories of people that I've met in my journey in recovery. Did the same things, right? And I knew this guy was clean, right? And I didn't know, you don't really know anything, but I knew that Ian had changed his life, right? And I would run into him periodically when I was in my disease, right, actively in my addiction. And I think the last time was like before it was like a Mother's Day. I was walking into 7-Eleven and I had fucked some shit up one more time, right? And I was telling him about all my problems, and he's like, "Oh, you think you might have an issue?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good, man. Hey, later," right? And that's kind of how it went. And when things got real bad, I reached out, right? The phone rang, and I asked for help, right? I had been actively seeking some sort of outside help for a while. I was getting turned down by, rehab facilities and stuff, and
Yeah, that's fun.
And it was like a simple conversation. I know you had to tie some things up on your end, and it was like, hey, and the conversation basically went as, hey, I'm going to call you back, and I might have an opportunity for you. And if you don't take that opportunity, don't ever fucking call me back.
Pretty much.
That was the conversation, right? And, man, the rest is history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love this guy, like, dearly. Like, most of our conversations start with an insult and end with an insult. Yeah. But on this format, I'll tell him that, right? Because he is an important person in my life, right? No matter what goes on between me and Ian helped me on this journey of recovery. So,
well, yeah, I've never heard you be that nice to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. But yeah, I remember all that stuff very clearly.
Yeah.
I remember all, and it was definitely kind of like you said, just now here we are. Like,
yeah.
It seems like it was not that long ago.
No.
But then I watch you do celebrate all your birthdays and all that stuff, and it's impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things that just keeps happening, right? If I put one more day together. And one more day together, eventually I'm going to have some time, right?
Well, and you still do the whole program, and you do all of it correctly. You do all of it, you're full in on it. I'm not.
Yeah.
You know that.
Well, and that's like the most interesting thing, right? Like, is at the beginning, like when I first got clean, I thought the rehab facility that worked was the one that I went to. I thought the program that worked was the one that I went to, right? I was so self-consumed in a way to I wasn't open-minded enough to understand that there's multiple ways to get clean and stay clean.
But
right?
Those ways that you were familiar with are proven to be a good, for the majority of people, that is going to help them.
Yeah.
Other ways it gets dicier.
Yeah.
And it's not really something you want to gamble on. But yeah, you can find it all different ways, but the percentages are with kind of what you did.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. And for me, like, I am So I want to eliminate the risk, right? And so I stay plugged in, right? I do the 12-step program. I don't do it perfectly, right? But for me, it's super important to at least be around people that are in the recovery process. So that way I know, I have somebody to tell me, hey, dude, you're fucking slipping. Or, we notice something, are you all right? Right. So anyways, but getting back to Ian, like what's your clean date, Ian?
December 7th, 2012.
2012. So, and that's over, 11 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, coming up
on 11 years. Mm-hmm. So like, what does that mean to you?
I mean, it means everything.
Right.
That's when I actually started being a fucking human being. That's when I started being even a resemblance of what I should have been.
Right.
And just pull my head out of my ass. And it was hard getting there. It was hard getting there. But I just remember the day I walked into rehab, how relieved I was. I finally got in the doors. They had a bed for me. I passed the damn test, and I was actually in. And it was the biggest relief.
Yeah. And so, like, I know you grew up let me let you get into it. I don't know how far back you want to go. But, like, what led you to the point, right? Like, what was life like, even if you want to go back to growing up or, if you want to go back to your using career? Because people are looking at us like, you don't look like an addict today.
That was always a benefit.
Right?
That was always something that I used for my advantage.
Right.
I mean, we'll go back you and I go way back. I mean, I was always a partier, but I was functional. Nothing extreme. We did drugs. We had fun. But what got me to go over the edge was when I was like 26, 27, I actually got like a little growth on my pituitary gland. And not really a tumor, just like a tiny little spot. And going to the doctors, I didn't have insurance good enough to do anything about it, so they just started throwing me pills. And I did that for about 3 years and just went over the edge with that. And then that's when things kind of got out of hand.
Yeah.
That's what did it for me, was the non-insurance thing.
Well, we tend to minimize our drug use,
Mm-hmm.
like, because
we did drugs,
like us in high school, right? Like, we had each other in first period.
Of course,
right?
If we went, yeah.
It wasn't uncommon for you to be sleeping on the desk in first period. And that wasn't because you were tired.
Most of the time,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what, like, it's funny because, like, even talking with Jesse, right, in our car rides, like, we talk about like certain things, and I share about my past, and he's like, "That's fucking crazy."
There's a lot of those stories,
right?
I do have a lot of stories that are
a
little out there.
But the group we ran with, that wasn't abnormal.
No.
Birds of a feather flock together, right?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
And that's what, and so you talk about going to the doctor and having this growth, right? And I remember seeing you through this process. Mm-hmm. You were shaky. You weren't
I started having seizures.
Right.
I actually had 3 seizures that scared the shit out of me, and I still couldn't do anything about it. They just kept giving me pain pills and go away.
When you were bedlocked for a while.
I mean, I was kind of, yeah. I also got hit by a car right then, but like, that was when the guy ran me down at 7-Eleven. But like, that kind of nothing to do with it, kind of. But yeah, it got bad, and it really was just, all I needed was a very simple surgery, but I just couldn't get in there to get it until finally a doctor helped me out, and I did, and I got the surgery, and then after that, I was sitting there just as a fucking addict, like. And I didn't quite see it yet, but I did. And I kind of hated myself for like the next 2 years until I finally lost that house, lost everything, showed up at my parents' house like I was going to stay there. And the next morning they took me up to Gilroy, and my dad pulled the car over and said, "Get out." I got out, and he drove up about 30 feet, and he pushed a suitcase out, and they drove away.
Wow.
And they just left it at that. And that's definitely what saved me. Because at that moment I was like, oh, fuck, okay. So I went and got the suitcase, and I had a little bit of money on me and stuff like that, and just kind of bounced around. It took me almost a year to get into rehab. And I got into a couple dicey ones. And, I mean, the story is weird. But it all led to finally getting in the Salvation Army.
Right.
And finally getting where I needed to go. And I was so happy to be there.
Yeah, and because I remember that process you're talking about, because I was still very much highly functioning this time, right? Mm-hmm. So I would come over as the friend, like, trying to give you hope. But hope in the form of like some weed or something, right? Like loving you the best way I knew how at the time, right? And then so like that process of being dumped off in Gilroy, like I gotta imagine, like at the time, like now looking back on it, you're like, oh man, that was the best thing that happened. But it probably didn't feel that way at that moment.
No, of course not. But at the same time, I was in my addiction, so it really didn't affect me one way or another that hard. Because I mean, nothing is that. As a matter of fact, when using. It's just I'm really more just worried about what I'm going to do the next fucking hour.
Yeah.
So it didn't really affect me like it would have if I had been clear-headed when that happened. It would have been brutal.
Yeah.
But since I was fucking using, I was like, well, dicks, whatever it is, and just kind of moved on. I didn't know anybody in Gilroy. That was kind of weird, but I mean, I still kind of, like I said, it took me a year still. Even though I was somewhere I didn't know anybody, didn't have any kind of resources, I still managed for a year before I got my ass fucking where I needed to go.
Yeah. Well, my sponsor says if you're a good addict, they could drop you off in the street corner with lint in your pocket. You're gonna figure out a way to get loaded.
Pretty much, yeah. And yeah, it was bad. I mean, a couple of the rehabs I went to, they're actually one of them I got jumped. One of them they stole all my shit. Like it was just, and these are like the people that are like running it. So I mean, it's just it's just addicts, I mean,
Right.
And but it all worked out.
Yeah.
It all worked out. I had a cop help me. That I don't know why, and then that got myself to where I needed to go.
Right. And I remember you talking about like your experience with the treatment facility. Like there was a certain individual that chased you around trying to help you out and get you in that facility, right?
Yeah. He's definitely one of the best men I've ever encountered. And he was like a dog. I mean, he would call my phone occasionally, and I didn't even know I don't know how he got the number. I mean, and he kept me thinking about it for probably about 2 years.
Right.
And that was moments when I wasn't trying to go there. I wasn't trying to hear him, but he'd still call.
Right.
And he actually got me. He's the one that made the biggest influence on just wanting to go there. I wanted to go to that one where he was at because it seemed like it would work.
Well, in all the while, like it may sound real cold, like your parents dumping you off, but they were working behind the scenes to try and get you help. Right?
I failed that drug test at least 10 times. I knew I was gonna fail it, but like I was like going through the motions, like they'd have me meet them and yada yada, and just like no, just whatever bullshit to make up just to keep using, and it doesn't make sense, but that's what you do.
Yeah, ways and means.
Mm-hmm. It was stupid. It just wasted everybody's time and effort, and then when I did want to go in there and I actually did mean it, there were no beds.
Right.
And then it's like, fuck, all right, Gilroy, I guess.
Well, and so like for people that understand, to get into that treatment facility, you have to give them like a clean piss test or
Yes.
close to it.
Well, yeah, the idea is because if you don't, then you could do what I was doing. You could just kind of stretch it out, and I never piss clean.
Right.
And you had a bunch of addicts running around in that motherfucker. So I mean, it makes sense, but yeah, you have to be clean, and that is tough when you're not wanting to be, but kind of wanting to be.
Right. Well, that's it. Like I explained, like last time we were doing the podcast, like using against your own free will, right? Like people don't understand that there's times, especially towards the end,
Oh yeah.
Where you're actually using drugs against your own free will.
I hated it for 2 years.
Right.
I hated that I had got up and I felt like shit and I'd have to get. I mean, I absolutely couldn't stand it, but I still couldn't fucking stop.
Right.
My dad even said to me a few times, like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Just fucking stop." And like, I wish it was that easy, but it just wasn't. It's just not like that.
Yeah, that's and so I know you talked about your clean date and the relief you felt, right? But what was it like for you early on, like in the first part of getting into that treatment facility? Like, do you remember what your mental state was?
Yeah, I do. It was much different than most people's. I was happy as fuck to be there, and everyone was real bitchy moany, kind of woe is me, and one of the first things I ever said in a meeting is like, fuck all you guys, because like I'm happy to be here and this is like where I want to be, so don't bring that kind of fucking attitude around me, because I don't want. I was, and I kept that attitude. This is what I was looking for. This is what I need to do, is turn my life around. This is how you do it, and that's just kind of how I kept it. Yeah, that place will bring you down some, like, but that's kind of the point. But I definitely noticed early on that I looked at it a lot different than most everybody around me,
Right.
because I wanted to be there and I wanted to fucking pull my head out of my ass so I could fucking move on with my life.
Well, and you bestowed that coaching upon me before I entered the treatment facility, right? And I know what you're talking about, because a lot of people that are there to beat a court case, or they're there just to go on another run, right? And so how do you navigate yourself through that early part of your recovery, because we're, as steadfast as you can be in your mind state, as addicts, we do want to fit in, right? A lot of times we want to get along with people, right?
Yeah.
So how do you stop yourself from falling into those pitfalls?
Getting along and actually making friends is a whole different thing.
Right.
I mean, I just stayed to myself. And there were people that I had that, like, we were friends there, but I think they didn't realize how little of a friend I really was to them. I was fine. They were cool to hang out with, whatever, in the moment, but I really didn't give a shit what they had to say, what their opinion was on things, because I knew that I needed to do things a certain way, and if they want to say something stupid, that was fine. Go do something stupid. Like, I'm not going to waste my time with it. And that's, it may sound kind of mean or whatever, but no, that's the way it needed to be. I didn't go there for anybody else. I didn't need my fucking friends. I have fucking friends everywhere else. Like, I don't need those. I did end up making a couple, but even then, when things hit the fan, I cut them loose in a second. Because we all went there because we have fucking problems. We don't need to be hanging out together like all the time. We have major issues that fucking brought us all to that place. That's like not where you want to like take a pool of friends.
Right.
In my opinion.
Well, it's funny because I got like a few of my like best friends that I met in treatment, right? In different strokes for different folks, right?
I think you have a few more in your era that actually made it though. In my era, I honestly, there's nobody left really. Of like people that graduated around my time. There wasn't a big number ever. The biggest number I think there were is like in a year period, I knew like 6 or 7 people.
Right.
And then that number, of course, just took a nosedive. I mean, almost immediately. So besides you, I really don't know anybody that's made it out of there like and stayed clean.
Right.
Which is depressing, but like that's kind of where I got my attitude towards it, because I was watching people just get burned out of that place so fast. Once you kind of get there and realize they're actively trying to get you out of there, and how many people come in and out. I wasn't trying to like make friends.
So you developed a mentality of like self-preservation over everything.
Well, that's what I went in there with.
Right.
And actually, I think the first few nights when I hadn't really known anybody, I got a nice feel for that, because I definitely was in a different mood than everybody else. And so I realized I don't really see anything the same way as most of these guys. And there were a few guys that definitely shine. I take that back. Lamar, he actually is still clean. So, and then maybe 1 or 2 others. But that's about it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very few. And yeah, self-preservation, but really that's who I was there for.
Right.
I wasn't there to make anybody else, feel better or worse or whatever it is. Just I'm there to do my thing.
Well, like the hard part for me going is I thought I was in there for myself at first, but at first I was in there for my kids and to try to get my ex back, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it only started working when I started trying to do it for myself, right?
I mean, that's what they say though, is whatever reason gets you going, it gets real once you realize it's actually you. Because I mean, if it's court, if whatever it is, it gets you getting the motions, and then you kind of get pick up speed. If it clicks and you realize you're doing it for you, those are the guys that actually have a chance.
Right.
It's the ones that just keep thinking they're just appeasing their old lady or something, that they're not gonna make it.
Right.
I mean, they're gonna go back out immediately.
So complete upon completion of that program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what does life look like for Ian? Like I mean, you got this new way of life. You're clean.
Nobody gives a shit though.
Right.
Like, you just did all this work. You're so proud of yourself. You walk outside in the street and no one gives a fuck. Like, who cares? I mean, you're now you're a functional part of society. Fucking great job. Go do something. Like, no one really cares at all, which is appropriate. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, just the way it is. I went to the halfway house there in Lodi, stayed in, like pretty much the same type of living, and then went like to apartments, and then just kind of progressed and just kind of did my thing that way. Other than that, like, there weren't a lot of options unless you had like you had to your kind of life to come back to, but I didn't really have that. I didn't really want that. So you don't have a lot of options. Like, when you get out of rehab, it's just you gotta start fucking going. Like, do that shit. Actually, I had problems with them in rehab with that facility because they wouldn't even allow me, because I was always on restriction. I couldn't even make phone calls or anything leading up to graduation. So I had like 0 fucking plans that were like solid that I could confirm. I had to confirm through my roommates and stuff like that because they're making phone calls for me. It made it very difficult to kind of know what was happening. And you're talking about like somebody's life there at that point. I mean, let me make a couple phone calls, but that's not the way it worked. And so I just had to make it. It worked out, but like, it was weird. I mean, my parents came over like for the graduation, and like we hung out and had dinner, but it was I didn't want to go like back to their place. They didn't want me back at their place. That was not even an option, not even close. And so I just kind of started working shitty jobs.
Right.
And people taking advantage of addicts, because they'd come and get people from that place knowing that, what are we really going to say if they treat us like shit? I mean,
well, we were used to being treated like shit for 6 months,
yeah,
right? You're kind of,
yeah,
because that's what, like, a lot of people. It's funny because I spoke at a men's meeting in Merced, and there was like 40 guys in the room, and a lot of guys were from a treatment facility. When I told them I completed the Salvation Army, there was like a gasp in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
It does get some pull. Yeah, it has some respect with kind of people that know.
Yeah, but it is like, I mean, like I talk. I got such a firm foundation because I got used to practicing the first 3 steps every single day. I can't, they can, so I'll let them, right? There's no other way to fucking make it through it.
No, there isn't. You're at their will happily, and that's appropriate.
Right. And then you get spit out into the real world. And so what is your mind state like coming out of that treatment facility? I know you talk about, and it's the truth, when you get out of rehab, especially when you're middle-aged, right? It's like people don't really give a shit. Like, oh, good for you, buddy. You had a drug problem.
Sweet.
Yeah,
good job. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
or they look at you like, oh, you got a drug problem. Like it's still the negative. Like, bitch, at least I'm not using. I mean, fucking, it's definitely not a huge thing like you think it is.
Yeah. Well, my situation was much more comfortable, right? I had a job to come back to, right? And things like that. And I always admire the people that didn't have nothing coming out of there, because it's extremely hard to find some sort of hope in the real world when you're coming out, and you're just trying, like, you feel like you're big shit because you got 6 months in there, big guy on the block, and you just spit out into the real world. And can you explain like what that process was like going through jobs and trying to?
It's eye-opening, and it's not warm and fuzzy. It isn't, but I mean, it's definitely doable. But you better change your mind state on, like you said, you're not the big fish. That's not even the case. Actually, that's all that is a hole in your resume.
Right.
It's just a gap of like, well, what the fuck were you doing? Like, were you in jail? Like, I mean, it's definitely not a positive thing for the most part. Some people that maybe have had addiction in their lives know what Salvation Army is, but that's very particular kind of chance situation. You can't just put that on a resume or something like that, because for the most part, they're gonna say, what the fuck? Putting rehab on a resume and move right on.
Yeah.
I had to get jobs using people and connections I had there in the beginning, because there was no other way really to get one. Like, I had no car. I had to be able to go with these other guys. One guy had a car and shit, so we all just kind of worked for these guys that kind of gave jobs to us. Without that, I don't think there would have been a lot of hope, period. Like,
right.
Because we would all have been like walking around looking for jobs, and there's no freaking way. I mean, it worked out because of people that are trying to give back. A lot of these guys are, recovery, and they do have some kind of tie-ins, but yeah, it's not fun. It's not pretty, because it's just, you're middle-aged and no one cares.
Right.
And I mean, it's the reason why I stayed in Lodi, Sacramento area, or Stockton area, is because I didn't know anybody. And I kind of just wanted to just keep that going. Like, not come back here, not come back to Merced, Modesto, and just kind of see what happened with it. And it kind of worked out.
Right. And I remember when I would see you coming around town, like, you wouldn't associate with anybody.
No, not at all.
Right.
I mean, if there's a few people, I even told them, like, when they asked, hey, let me get your number. No, I don't want to give it to you. Like,
right.
I'm not even sorry about it. I just don't want to give it to you. Just nothing personal, but I'm not going to call you.
Right.
You're not going to call me. We're just going to leave it at that.
Well, so you took that people, places, and thing very seriously, right?
I take all of it very seriously, even though I may not, I think you're about the one person I've ever expressed it to, but I take it all very seriously. I still take ibuprofen and things like that very sparingly, only if necessary, because I feel like I definitely used up my kind of percentage for my life.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't take anything at all lightly when it comes to that stuff.
Well, and it's funny because, like, we talk about recovery, right? And you shared a lot of things. Like, you shared one thing with me that I held on to, right? And I think it's one of the reasons that I stayed clean, right? Like, helping or hurting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what's that all about?
Yeah, that I honestly it still is a big part of helping me have at least a system when I didn't know what the fuck to do. And which is a lot of time, most of the time, because you're trying to be a new person. You go into rehab, and you hear, you have to be new and do things differently. So if this is the way you normally do it, then try it this way. And that gets really confusing after a while. And the world's kind of coming at you, and the jobs and things like that. It's hard to stay on the right path and be confident about it. And helping or hurting is kind of what came of it. It's, if you get real basic and kind of break anything down to a very simple form, it's fucking helping you, it's fucking hurting you. And if as long as you're honest about it to yourself, you can make a decision from that. Right. I mean, it's general, and it's not scientific, but it does fucking work as long as you're being honest with yourself. If you're just gonna lie to yourself and pick the one you want anyway, then don't waste your time fucking doing it. But helping or hurting, it definitely made me see things differently a few times that I didn't want to see, and I just had to do what was right, do what was correct.
Yeah, because I mean, in the program altogether, it's very simple, right? It's a simple way of life for complicated people, right? And so some of these simple principles, like helping or hurting, or do the next right thing, one day at a time, right? They sound cliche, right? And at the beginning, you get tired of hearing this stuff, but the longer you stick around, the more it makes sense.
Dude, the most cliche sayings are generally, there's a reason. Right. They are very true. If you sit back and pull your head out of your ass and kind of let yourself listen to it, they're fucking gold. But they just sound stupid because, society, but there's a reason why they're cliche. There's knowledge to those. Like, if you listen and do those, you'll be all right.
Right.
Don't take them lightly because it's some stupid, play on words, or no, it's listen to them. All the stupid ones, all the t-shirts, all that stuff. Yeah.
There's something to it, right? And,
exactly.
And it's funny because me and you will talk, and I honor your opinion, right? Like, but we don't do the same things for our recovery anymore.
Not even close.
But at the same time, you still live by the principles of 12-step recovery, even though you'll shit on it, right? Because you've had some negative experiences.
I don't necessarily shit on it. I shit on the people.
Right.
That's more about it. I mean, the program in general it's nice. It's like you said, the simple, the basics. That's kind of what I like to, because it's with anything, the basics are where it all is. And so I just kind of use those. But yeah, I only shit on it because I don't like people.
Yeah.
And that's really it. It's just the variable of that. People can fuck anything up. And I mean, including myself, definitely myself. But for everybody's benefit, I just kind of stay out of the rooms because I don't gain what I need to gain out of them.
Right.
It's not my thing.
And to each their own, right?
Exactly. And I never say this to an addict or to a family. If I'm talking to somebody that has an addict, I never lead with this type of thing because I don't believe that my way of doing it is a high percentage way of doing it. And I would never encourage somebody to oh, fuck the program. Like, no, I never lead with that foot. I mean, somebody that gets to know me more, then I'll kind of tell them, but I'll always point people that direction.
Well, and it took me 6 months to figure this out about you because you helped walk me through the program, right? Like, you sponsored me in treatment, right? And you helped me so much, right? For in the ways that you helped me were not the kindest, right? They weren't the nicest, and it wasn't like...
That's not, yeah. I mean, they were, though. I was being nice by helping you.
Yeah. yeah. But, and that's why, and once I got back in town, I'm, fully immersed in the 12-step program. I'm like, shit, I got to switch sponsors, right? Because but you kept that illusion alive for me long enough for me to get where I needed to go.
You hung on to it a lot longer than I ever thought you would, but yeah. I remember you asking me about sponsors. I was like, don't give a fuck. You made it now, do your thing, shit. But yeah, I didn't want to ever lead you, even make you feel like at that point you have the ability to say, oh, I'm going to pick this, I'm going to do this, because I didn't pick this route on. I didn't know what route I was picking, and I listened to everything, and I came to that conclusion at the appropriate time. If you're early into it and you're gonna start oh, I don't want to do that shit, that's stupid. Everything's fucking stupid when you're an addict and they're trying to get you clean, so I don't ever want to taint, and you especially, I didn't want to taint your kind of because I know how strong-willed we are. If you got into your mind, you would have never let go of it.
Right.
Oh, well, Ian's doing it this way, so I'll be fucking fine to do it this way. Maybe you won't. And I would maybe, feel like it was my influence that did that.
Well, and that's it. It's a process of identification, right? And you find the right people in the right times to help you get where you need to go, right? And for me, I needed to hedge my bets, right? And I needed to make sure that I don't feel like I could do this thing on my own, right? And that's my personal belief, right? And so I need to honor my belief system by staying plugged in, right? And then I watch you do it, and you do it different, right? But you're doing it, right?
And I still have my accountability in a completely different way,
right?
But it's literally the opposite. In my opinion, people actually generally dilute my recovery. If I'm standing myself, I'm more vulnerable, and I get less out of it, and actually it brings me closer to the wrong direction. So in the helping and hurting aspect of it, in a kind of weird way, that's hurting me. Even if I am helping somebody, I'm not going to risk me,
right?
And I don't have time for that shit. And that's at a good situation. In a bad situation, it's really going to be detrimental. And those are the ones I give you a lot of credit for because you kind of are down there, helping people that you can. But there's a lot of people that they don't want to be helped.
No.
And I mean, I had a roommate that I had to kick out. He was with me in rehab, and then he started using it again. So I had to kick him out and he was, smoking in the bathroom, and then searched the room for all the drugs, and like I did this all alone, and he was in the same shit I was into, and like I didn't want to use them, but at the same time I had to acknowledge like this isn't like okay, like I can't just be doing this just without at least accepting the reality. And then that's when I picked up on kind of that part of my recovery, which is I have to be realistic. Something can be a bad situation or not recommended or something like that, and acknowledging it and not acknowledging it are completely different fucking planets. If you're just going to act like it's not, it's going to set you up for a disaster. As long as you kind of own the reality and are aware of the choice that you're making, you have a better shot of maybe being that lower percentage that is able to do that. Or you can at least maintain while you find out why that's fucking a reason, and then back out and go the appropriate direction without losing what I have.
Right.
And so it was all kind of a learning experience. It really was just. And again, I wouldn't advise anybody to do it, but for me, that was what was best.
Right.
Because I'm a little bit different than most.
You're unique.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's funny because I spent my first, couple years clean, and I thought I could help everybody, right?
Yeah.
I got a big heart that way. I guess I'm like my mom in that way, where you just want to help people, right? Because you've been given this gift, right? But you have to be willing to receive the gift, right? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing worse than fucking unsolicited advice, right?
I mean, especially in that situation, it is not invited at all. And but it's funny because I know you were eager to do that, and I saw it, and you mean it from a good place.
Yeah.
But
I'm still that guy, right?
I mean, it is a good thing, but it's not taken that way.
Yeah.
And that's why I helped you, because you reached out to me.
Right.
I mean, 100%. Like, I was driving. I remember where I was. I was sitting at this four-way stoplight at Stevenson when you called me. And I was not the most warm and welcoming on the phone, but I was giving you an option.
Yeah.
And you stuck with it. And I was not warm and welcoming when I picked you up, but I was giving you an option. It was as it needed to be.
Right.
But I mean, that's why there's no way I could do that with somebody that didn't want to do it. It'd just be wasting my time.
Yeah, and I've learned the tough way. I mind my own business now, right? 90% of the time, I wait for somebody to reach out.
You have to.
Right? Because, honestly, in my life, I'm so busy, right, with kids. We got this project. I got work. I got relationship. I got my own recovery I'm trying to maintain, right? And none of it's perfect.
There's all of it time in the day. There's never enough time in the day.
All of it can use a little bit more time, right? So to give my time to somebody that's not willing to accept the gift, right? Because this gift is huge.
It's life.
Right. It's a second chance at a first class life is what everybody says, right? And it's the truth, right? And it doesn't mean, successful businesses, yachts and Lamborghinis, but it's a new perspective.
It means breathing and fucking being happy about it.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, because it wasn't always like that, right? Like, I'm not waking up today looking to get well.
No, it's every day is just whatever the day is. There's no predetermined kind of I have to do this, and no, it's whatever it wants to be.
So like at this point, right? So you're 10 years in. What does life look like for you as far as like why do you stay clean, right?
Oh, I not only have no want to use or even partake in any kind of even lightweight drinking, anything like that, like people kind of get back into sometimes. I actually, I can still hang on to the kind of resentment of the time I wasted using. I don't like that, and it's still something I do hang on to, probably a little bit inappropriately, but I don't like it. Like I would, and people always kind of say this isn't correct, but I would trade that time to not do it in a second. Experience and all that stuff, fuck it, out the window, gone. I would happily switch that out and see where I'd stood. Because it was such a waste of time.
Right. And
it was such a dumb thing that I spent so much energy on. And it took me literally nowhere. So, yeah, I definitely have no problem. You could put whatever you wanted in front of me. Hell, I could fucking watch you do it. I don't have any want of anything like that at all. That's not really a concern of mine at all. It's more the behaviors and things that are toxic that kind of come with that. That's where I consider like backsliding. That's where I've had my issues where I really need to kind of watch myself. It's the tendencies and it's the attitude and just the kind of fuck it's basically.
Right.
And those are the things I watch out for more because I'm much more prone to do that than I am to go fucking take a pill or smoke something. I have no desire.
You want to elaborate on that a little bit, because I know that's a huge process in recovery. It's not only, well, the minor part is the drugs, right? The major part is the behaviors.
Yes, and that's where the helping or hurting came in. That's where if my first thought was this, I would kind of sit back for a minute and try this, and that was changing, becoming a different person, and it's okay. You know, you're not becoming like a new fake person. You're just trying to make yourself better and trying to kind of discover who you really are, because you're an asshole when you're using. You're very selfish, and you're not really a functional like member of society. You're kind of a little just drug addict, and so you have to let yourself kind of figure out what you are. You don't know, and a lot of people aren't open to that because they feel like they're being fake or this and that. No, try it. If you've done it this way, fucking try it this way, and that's a huge part of it, because then you're trying shit at 30 years old. In reality, nobody else knows what the fuck you're doing. You're like trying new things, and I mean, it doesn't always work, and so you're kind of fucking up your life as you're going on and trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not.
Can you explain, like, without like a support group and stuff, how you catch yourself in these behaviors, right? And like, is it been like trial and error of like, bam, bang my head over here, let's do it different?
I've gotten fired on the spot. I've lost jobs. I've had all kinds of stuff go on. That's, looking back on it, it kind of makes me laugh, but like at the moment, it definitely wasn't funny. And I mean, and that's how I learned from it. But I try to at least know that anytime something like that does go on, I at least knew what choices I made, kind of leading myself there, and I was confident in those at the time, so I could at least be confident of, well, okay, maybe I need to not do that. But I didn't ever second guess myself on, as far as I was doing it for bad reasons, bad intentions. I made sure I had good intentions. I was trying fucking for whatever direction I was coming from, I was trying to do that. It just didn't work.
So it's basically like ruthless self-examination of trial and error.
Right. And I mean, I was single for most of the time. I have a girlfriend now, thankfully, but like by myself with my dog, and I'd have time to reflect. And I am that type of person where when I'm driving, things like that, I overthink and I kind of, write stuff down, and I would look at things probably more in depth than what people would, because I mean, when I was using, we'd do all kinds of crazy shit the next day, get up and do it again, and we'd forget about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was no even moment of like, there's stuff that I've heard people telling stories about that I was involved in, and I'm like, oh yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that happened before the podcast right now.
Oh shit. And so it was kind of the opposite, just actually reflect and try to learn from my interactions throughout the day. Even if they seem small, try to find something from them. And just keep myself accountable. Because it wasn't the drugs, but it was the attitude. And some of the addict attitude is slightly beneficial, but it's still toxic. Addicts do get it done. Like, they want to fucking get high. We get high. I mean, it's fucking, but you can't use it in that way. And so you have to kind of figure out what works.
Right.
And what's appropriate in reality, in the real world.
Yeah, so because, I mean, a lot of the things that they call character defects sometimes are just a character asset ran wild, right?
Right.
And if you could take it, re-aim, reprioritize, a lot of addicts tend to be very successful because they learn how to refine those behaviors and get rid of the negative, keep the positive, and move forward.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. Prisons, rehab centers, things like that, there's a whole lot of wasted freaking talent, just going to waste because they're stuck. Addicts that make it have the ability to kind of use that. Like you said, we have experience, and we kind of have a defect that we've let run wild, that if you can kind of turn into something positive, usually it is a big advantage in business or whatever it may be, because it's the ability to kind of function on your feet,
right,
and make it happen, even though you shouldn't. Everything says you shouldn't, but you're gonna make it happen.
Right. And that's always, and I'm waiting for myself to get out of this process of getting shit done when my back's against the wall, right? It was the way I was in my addiction, and it's the way I am now, right? Like, sometimes I wait until the very fucking last moment, and then boom, 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 get it all done, right?
Well, what's the other option?
Right? Do it little by little so I can have a more relaxed life.
Do you know anybody that does that?
I do know a few people, but they're fucking weird.
I mean, I would say, like, do you really just think that? Because I don't think anybody does that. I mean, honestly, I think people all want to do that. It's kind of like when you say, like, oh, I need to get this, figured out. I don't think anybody has shit figured out, honestly. We're all just fucking trying, like, at the last minute. Right. We're all just fucking making it just by that one moment. And that's kind of life.
Right.
And it's just kind of enjoying that. And you aren't going to get out of it. Like, I don't think so. I'm not going to get out of it, but I could be happy like I am.
Yeah. And so, like, I know, like, some of the most important relationships that you have would be, like, your parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, what did that look like before you went to treatment?
They were done with me.
Right. And so, like, what was that process like for you of, like, building that back? And what does it look like now?
I mean, now it's as it should be. I'll say that. Now we're definitely back to where you would expect to be, you know. At the time in rehab, they were done with me, and I accepted it. My dad sent me a letter about 30 days in saying that the dog I left at his house he was going to give away, and don't fucking call him. I was like, cool, great. That's fun. He didn't give away the dog, and he kept it. But they, on their own terms, came back into my life. They came to graduation. They started kind of just doing this and that. I didn't ask for, seek out, or expect shit from them because I didn't deserve it. And I just let them kind of work their way to me, and I didn't push it at all. If they wanted to come take me to lunch, cool. I went and had lunch with them, and I left it at that. I didn't start asking about, like, anything. I just, if they asked me something, I'd answer the question. I didn't try to push at all because I didn't feel like it was okay. I was happy to at least have them right there. And so there was no expectation of, like, are you guys, like, not mad at me anymore? Like, no, they're fucking mad at me. Like, that's fine. I deserved it.
Right.
So they kind of worked their way out. By the time I was in that transitional living, my dad helped me buy a 4Runner, like a used shitty little 4Runner, and that I didn't expect that.
And so that relationship today is...
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Did you paint the pool?
I did. It was hot as shit that day, dude. I did. Got it done before 10 a.m.
Right. And so, you know, and those are the kind of things, those are the miracles they talk about in recovery, right? Like stuff like that seems so far broken that comes back. I mean, the miracles could come in all forms.
It came back so fast. Right. And I thought they were, you know, I wrote them off, you know, for a long time. I mean, the same day in rehab, I got that letter from my dad. I got written up like 3 times in the warehouse, and I had a warrant served from Santa Clara County, all that same day. And I was like, fuck, I mean, it just, you know, super, super down on myself, all mopey. But none of that shit even mattered. None of it mattered a damn in the long run. Like, I honestly don't know what I got written up for. I mean, obviously my dad didn't give away the dog, and the warrant, the minute I got out of rehab, the next day I went to court, and that judge made a huge deal about I was in rehab and I came to the next day and all this just stuff. He was so happy, he basically just threw everything out.
Right.
I mean, nothing at all. And I was going to get arrested that day, but I just went home.
And so that just details, like, my problems yesterday really aren't problems today, and my problems last month seem to be okay today. And
I mean, it's like you never get what you expect or hope for, but if you're doing it right, you get way fucking better. Right. You couldn't even imagine what you get. You know, you have your, I want this. It'll be better if you just do what you're supposed to do at that time.
Right.
You know, work towards it and do what you have to do, and it'll be like you never could have thought of.
And so, like, so say somebody's listening to this thing, right? And they're down in the dumps, or they're in their addiction, or like, what would you tell somebody that's struggling right now? You know, I know you don't like to give unsolicited advice, right?
I mean, I will. That's fine. There are people that want to help. There are good people that want to help. Not of course, not everybody, but there are people that know what they're talking about and want to help you. Go fucking find them. And it's a process on getting clean. I mean, at least it was for me. I wanted to worse than anything else, and it still took me a long ass time. And I'm pretty good at, like, getting my way and getting stuff done. There were a lot of closed doors in front of me. It's not like it's gonna be handed to you, and that's how it should be. You fucked up. You can fix it though if you're still breathing.
Right.
You can fix it. Just go get no's and go get people that are kind of talking down to you and not helping you at all, and, you know, run into all these dead ends and shit like that. Just go do that shit, but keep going that direction.
Right. And
it will work out. And yeah, I wish him luck.
So is there anything we missed?
I mean, of course. But nothing spectacular. Why?
No, I'm just making sure before we wrap it up. Is there anything that you wanted to say or didn't say or wanted to share that you might want to get out there?
I'm sure I'll think of something. But no, I can't think of anything.
All right, cool. I think we did it. Ian, man, top 3, like, you're on my Mount Rushmore of people that fucking saved my life, man.
Well, I was happy to do it, man.
Yeah.
I was.
And I'm happy to have you here. I'm happy that you were willing to do this.
That's the way to put it, exactly.
Right.
I wouldn't have done this because I don't like this kind of shit, you know that. But for you, I will happily do it.
Yeah, because you're not willing to do fucking much, right?
No.
Like I don't know how many places I've fucking invited you to go that I don't even get like a maybe.
I laugh at you.
Yeah, it's like nope, right? So I could reinforce the fact that like there is a way, right? Like you can like even hate people and stay clean, right? Like there's so many different ways, and I think that's been the shortcoming of myself and so far in delivering this podcast. There's so many ways to get clean and stay clean.
What's the whole like NA thing? Don't judge people.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be taken that way too. If somebody's trying to get help, they don't need to do it your way.
Yeah.
Again, maybe not the highest percentage, but doesn't mean you not helping them is a good thing.
Right.
Fucking help. I mean, if that's what you're all about, fucking help them then.
Well, and that's it, right? And it took me, and that's what the principles talk about, but it took me a while to get it. Like anything else, it takes a while for stuff to set in, right? Like all I could worry about is what I'm doing, right?
Right.
And if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'll be in the right place to help somebody if they need that help.
Yes, that I'm a big believer in. You got to take care of yours to be available.
Right.
Because I mean, if you're fucking stretched thin and falling over, you're not gonna be able to help anybody. So you have to worry about you first.
And I get it, right? Because like this, especially this last month, I've been stretched thin, right? But I still find time to answer the phone. But I also, if I can, I won't, right? Like I'll be like, I need this for me.
And
right?
not feel bad. I mean, help cannot be expected from everybody. You can expect it from, somebody will help you, but you can't demand it from somebody.
Right.
So it can't be demanded of you. That's just not fair. That's not help at that point. I mean, I don't know what you call that. Okay, it's like
It's called a hostage.
Yeah, hostage situation. Yeah, I mean that's so it's not a bad thing. And as an addict, I did need to learn to say no and be okay with it.
Right.
Now I kind of love doing it, but like kind of got a hand. But I mean, hey.
Well, and you know what's funny is like you put on this persona, but if I called you and I needed help, you would show up.
And for most people, I do like to help. It's just I don't like to really put that out there because then
Yeah.
people may actually ask.
Now it's on fucking YouTube.
Yeah, that's fine. I still say no. Fuck it.
All right, I think we did it. Ian,
All right,
thank you, man.
All right, thank
you
you.
owe me a hug. even though you know, can you stand?
Yeah, I can. I'm stuck in the chair.
Thanks, man.
All right, thank you.